Hey Enneagram friends, I'm Abby, an IEA accredited Enneagram coach and certified somatic experiencing practitioner. And today on the podcast, I share the coaching space with an Enneagram 5, and together we explore the orientation of that strong inner world that's significant to the Type 5 structure. We also consider the energy that gets expelled in the mental to-do list that might be constantly shifting around in the background and really calculating the remaining energy and time that they have for the day. We also explore the sensation of being snapped back into reality when someone abruptly interrupts our thoughts and kind of pulls us out of that interior world. And we consider the invitation to connect with our children in that parenting space from more of a heart connection rather than a mental problem solving connection. This season, it's been a privilege to have so many more familiar faces in the coaching space with me for the podcast. And this Type 5 was someone that I had known previously from workshops that she had attended, and it was a gift to be back in that shared space again. So I hope that you'll listen in with curiosity and see what resonates in your experience. As we come into this coaching space, I know that you had a couple of ideas of things that were on your mind that you might bring into this space, but I'm curious to hear what you landed on, what feels most helpful for us to explore as we come into this shared space together.
Sure. So I feel like the component of like being more, and I'm guessing it's more emotionally present because, obviously I'm present, physically a lot of times. But there is times where I feel like, there's things that have to get done. Like there's all these things like can't sit still too long because then nothing's getting done. Like I haven't accomplished anything. So I feel like that's something that would be beneficial to work on. And I actually, so I get these and from the Enneagram Institute, like these little
Yeah.
daily things that they send. And the other day, one came through and it kind of like hit me a little bit. And I wrote it down. It says, you tend to be extremely intense and so high strung that it's difficult to relax and unwind. It
Mm-hmm.
says, learn to calm down in a healthy way without getting into obsessive habits that burn up excess energy. So I was like, okay, I hear you.
As you were reading through that, was there specific like instances that you feel like are causing that intensity and that feeling of being wound up, or even certain habits that you're using to kind of, burn through that intensity?
um, some of it's kind of hard for me, I think, because I guess I can acknowledge that maybe I'm intense. I don't know, but I don't feel like I am. Um, but I do know that like I feel like I always have to do stuff. And so sometimes even, so my family will be like, just sit down or like, why don't you play a game with us? Or, you're always doing the laundry. You're always like, you go from doing the laundry to then cleaning that. You always, so it's like, kind of like, just those things that feel like, you never really actually get done because um, that's just the way of life. But so I guess that I just want to, feel better about just kind of sitting and maybe just being still, I guess, and being
Yeah.
able to just relax. Um, so I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes for Type 5s, there's so much of the activity in addition to like the things you are physically doing, like the laundry, the dishes, the whatever, as you're trying to keep the house running and keep everyone alive. But there's also some of what can feel wound up, so to speak, for the Type 5 is just the mental activity, the thinking through. And sometimes those are really stimulating things, like something you're just trying to get to the bottom of, or whether that's, a hobby, something you're interested in, or something with work that you're just thinking about and trying to sort out and problem solve. But sometimes a lot of the activity can also be thinking about like what needs to get done, even like the sequential order of I will do this and then this and then this. How does that kind of land with you?
I would say that that's pretty accurate. Even, so while I'm doing things, I'm thinking about other things. So it's like, I'm, obviously physically doing something in my mind, I'm thinking about something. And then if, someone is asking me a question, I'm kind of like, I don't have capacity for that. I am thinking about something right now. Um, so, um, so yeah, so I would say that definitely resonates. And the list thing, that's definitely like, I feel like I'm a list person. Like I always like a list and like we got to do this and then we're going to do that and then that. But like when I actually think about it, I don't ever write it down. Like,
Mm.
and I don't know if that's just, you know, I don't just take the time to write it down, but I feel like there's constantly a running list in my mind of, like the things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But they may not always be in the correct order. So it's almost like I'm constantly shuffling the list in my mind of like, oh yeah, I did want to do that. Ooh, do I? And then it's like, oh, I don't think I have time to do that. So like, well, what can I do? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To then
And I,
find another thing.
yeah, I wonder if some of that reprioritizing, because I can almost picture as you're describing it, right? Like there being this mental list and things shuffling in and out of place. And I wonder if some of that reprioritizing has to do with managing your resources, right? So you said like, oh, I don't have time for that, or maybe there's something where it's like I don't have the energy or the mental capacity, the emotional space for that. And so some of that reprioritizing it in your mind is actually this management of like your resources, your time, energy, attention. Does that seem like that might be true?
Um, I would think so. I struggle with like with fives, it always talks about like the scarcity mentality, like you never think you have enough resources. So I'm trying to like recognize that because I don't feel like I ever feel like I don't have enough resources, but that might be, but for me it might be information. So like
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that thing, but I don't know everything about that yet. So I can't start it because then like I don't exactly know how to do, I can't complete it fully in my mind to know all the steps or the techniques or whatever. So like I can't quite start it yet because I don't have all the information.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas realistically, I could probably start it and figure it out, or you know what I mean? So I get kind of stuck in this like spiral um, of just thinking about all the things that I
Mm-hmm.
want to do or need to do or feel like I need to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think even, I mean, you've named it really well, like the information being a resource, or sometimes even people will say, like, I don't have enough either, like, education or inputted information for me to synthesize to then have an opinion or a set of like what is A through Z steps. I just have like A through F, and that doesn't feel like enough to get started. And so sometimes that resources can even be the sense of like knowledge or understanding about it in order to get going. But one of the things, though, even as you're talking through this, of I I wonder if you started to observe how much time that you spend thinking about your list, whether that is thinking about what needs to get done or reprioritizing it based on the time you have, the energy you have, the steps you've already laid out for it. How much time actually gets wasted in that mental exercise. And really that can be solved in just writing it down or even, scheduling it onto your calendar, like letting there be some other space that almost contains that list rather than your mind, whether that's a physical post-it note or something on your phone even.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because two things kind of um, made me laugh a little bit. Because my husband will be like, if there's something that we are going to do or maybe a decision that has to be made, and I'm like, okay, well, let me think about it, and so and he's like, okay, but like we need to decide by this time, so like you only have this amount of time to think about it, and like, and he's like, so what, and even a simple thing, he's like, what is it that you have to think about? Like it's not that difficult. Like what are you thinking about? So like kind of funny. And then like post-its, like my I feel like my desk is like covered in post-its because it'll be like all the things that I need to do. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna write it on this post-it because then it'll be like the immediate thing that I'm gonna do because then I can do the thing and then I can just tear the post-it up because I did the thing. So I do agree that writing it down potentially makes it like it then continuously remind, you know what I mean, is in my face almost, literally in my face. And also scheduling time too. So I've tried to start doing that with work where it's like I need to schedule time, kind of heads down time.
Mm-hmm.
So that because I feel that I'm very easily distracted. And I don't know if that has anything to do with being a five, but if I don't remove myself from a situation and then like, dedicate time to be heads down and actually, do the things, then I'll just constantly, it's almost like a squirrel. Like
Mm-hmm.
you see the squirrel and then you're like, oh yeah, I wonder about that. It's like different things will just pull me down a rabbit hole of like, oh yeah, I want to like look that up real quick. And then it doesn't even, it's not even real quick. Then I start reading about it. And then I'm like, so then it's like 30 minutes past and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like I was doing this thing and what was I doing? So I do feel like being intentional on, setting time aside for certain things does help
Mm-hmm.
me
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
focus for one, and two, give myself a space where, I'm intentional about what I'm doing.
Yeah, for sure. Because even as you talk through that, part of what is happening is it's almost sounds like you're like slipping into your inner world and didn't realize that you just went down the slide into the idea, right? The interesting thought, the I'll look it up, I wonder what's going to happen. And in that, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, having the capacity to withdraw, to investigate, to find something out, not just at the beginning, but all the way through to completion. There's tremendous gifts in that, right? We need that wealth of knowledge and that resourcing and that ability to problem solve and to find a solution, right? Some types really struggle with those pieces. But what can happen is that it happens habitually. And so it is not a choice of, oh, this is important and I need to investigate this. This is something that we need to solve and I'm gonna go through the sequence to find the solution. It's like you accidentally fall down the slide into your inner world and then you don't know how much time has passed because time doesn't work the same way in your inner world. It can be hours that have passed before you realize like, oh no, I need to come back. And even
Yes.
before, you kind of said like, I'm thinking about the thing, I'm doing the laundry, and then someone asked a question and it's like, I don't have enough capacity for that. And sometimes fives will even say like the moment of getting snapped out of your inner world can feel really like abrupt, like in almost as if you were asleep and someone shook you awake, or like you were asleep and someone all of a sudden with full audible voice asked you a question. That would feel very alarming, and I'm wondering if that's part of what might be your experience as you're in that inner world and someone snaps you back into reality.
Um, I yeah, I think so because it's I kind of sometimes realize, like, okay, I'm just going to read a little bit more, I'll look at one more thing. So I'm kind of like semi-aware, like, okay, like time's ticking, but it's not until I'm like what you're saying, you're kind of like all of a sudden you're like, okay, oh my gosh, like I have got to like almost wake up, like you kind of wake up and like do some, like do something, which I find like so kind of ironic because I have this feeling of like, oh, I got to do something. Oh, I want to like get this done and accomplish this and, feel good about that, we did something today. But then there's so, like you're saying, I get into times where there's so much time wasted in, down those rabbit holes that I'm like, oh my, like, it's you're like you're doing the opposite of what you're trying to do. But I do, when that happens, of like that snap that you're talking about, it's almost, I feel like when I get into situations of like deadlines, like I know it has to be done at this time or, day. So then it gets like almost like super focused, like,
Hmm.
then it's almost the pressure makes it easier for me to do things sometimes, which
Hmm.
is kind of weird, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, and some of what you're describing, I wonder if that is almost this movement to eight. We think about pressure being like, oh, you're stressed, but you can take on the gifts of eight on that line that you have in your the like connecting in the diagram, and have some of the like intensity, the hyper focus, the like we're just going and we're getting this stuff done, we're accomplishing, we're completing, because you have that energy in you too. It might just not surface as much until there's the pressure of, okay, like we gotta do this. This is the week that we
Yeah.
have to finish this or whatever it might be. But I think it's helpful even to name that that is a part of you too, even if it feels like it surfaces because there's external pressure. Even just having some sense of like, but I can access that part of me too. I am capable, and that is something that is of me. It's not fabricated. It's me doing the work. It's me completing the things. It's me fulfilling whatever the goal was, or the crossing the thing off the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, you had said at the beginning, kind of rewinding a little bit with, this moment of someone asked a question, and kind of getting this back into reality. Is there any sensation that, as you even think about that moment, any sensation that you can name, or how you would describe the feeling of that moment? I'm assuming, for me, if I think about like someone waking me up with a loud question, that would not feel good to me. I might have some bodily reaction and emotions of either like frustration, irritated, whatever. And so even if as you think about that moment, what happens for you when someone snaps you back into reality because they're present, or they want something from you, or they're asking a question?
Um, so like off the top of my head, I want to say it's not, I don't want to say anxious. It's not anxious. So like I'm trying to think of a situation where maybe, I was kind of zoned, like you're saying, like what you're describing, I'm thinking like I'm zoned out, and then something happens where I have to then like, and come up with a response or an answer. Um, so in a different direction, I feel like sometimes things will happen where I'm not necessarily zoned out, but like I'm almost blindsided
Mm-hmm.
by like, oh my gosh, like why did you do that? Or you know what I mean? Like, for example, if my kids, let's say they're like, oh, I did this thing, I made a mistake, whatever the mistake is. Then I'm like, oh no, like if I know I need to say something and I need to respond and I need to give, like some coaching here and some explanation, but I'm almost like panicked because I don't have all the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers in that moment. And so I kind of feel like flustered, and like then I kind of get like angry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, obviously I'm angry about what the decision may have been, but also like, okay, I need to use this right now to like explain this and why this is okay or not okay or what to do. I feel like I need to give all the information for all the scenarios, but then if I don't have it, then it's almost like I do get like anxious and kind of like I feel helpless, which then
Yeah.
makes me like um, so that I guess that's a feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you described it really well when you said that feeling of helplessness.
mhm.
We don't, sometimes that language doesn't come up as much around the type 5 structure. We'll say like, fives don't want to be dependent on people. They're really independent, self-sufficient, self-reliant. But a lot of that is in this effort to avoid these feelings of helplessness, of like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what needs to be done. I don't know the answer to this. And something about the situation is not allowing me to get to the answer, to the solution, to the knowledge that I need in order to make my way through. And it does stir up in us feelings, whether that is this nervousness, anxious feeling, or also anger, right? This sudden moment of I'm supposed to do something and I don't have the knowledge to do the thing that they're asking me, or I know I need to respond and I can't. It's like this, there's not enough information here. It doesn't compute. I don't know what to say. So yeah. I think you've named that well. Yeah. So one of the things that I maybe want to invite into that moment is, and who knows what the scenario is, right? I'm sure it ranges vastly between your kiddos and the things that they get themselves into. But I wonder if the next time this happens with your children, because there will be plenty, to instead of trying to think your way through that moment, inviting yourself to lead into that moment with more of that heart space. And what I mean by that is, instead of trying to figure it out, so figure out why they did what they did, how malicious was it, or what was the intent, or some of these things that we're trying to get to the bottom of, because we're trying to teach character and we're trying to resolve hurt and what might have happened to other people that were involved in this thing. Instead of leading with the headspace, because that will come later, instead in that moment connecting with your kiddo emotionally. And you can do that still with the gifts of curiosity that type 5s lead with so strongly. But instead of asking questions about the practical pieces of what happened, there can be some space for that. Instead, asking some questions about how they feel about it. So this is what I'm hearing you say. How do you feel about that? What's if they have a lower vocabulary around their emotions based off of their age, maybe even offering some thoughts of like, oh man, that seems like you might be pretty bummed out about that. Or were you scared when that happened? Or did you feel some other way? Sometimes even offering vocabulary, when we do that, we get in our mind like, oh, you're going to lead them down this trail of like, now they're going to be scared. It doesn't work that way, right? You're just giving them ideas and then they can resonate with, no, I don't think I was scared. I think I was really angry, Mom. I think I did XYZ because I'm so mad, or they're so annoying, or I'm so frustrated, right? And so instead, almost investigating that emotional heart space and mirroring it back to them. Not because you are angry too, but, I was listening to this child psychologist that does play therapy, and she talked about this idea that what children are looking for is congruence, that your emotional state matches theirs, in the sense that if they're angry, you are not pleasantly happy. You are in some way matching that, whether that is sympathetic or understanding of why they're angry, whatever it might be. If they're sad, that you match that, not because you are also sad, but you have this compassionate posture and disposition of like, oh man, that is such a bummer, kiddo. Like, that is such a bummer. I remember when those things used to happen to me when I was little, and that just sucks, and just instead of problem solving, trying to get to the sense of like, how do you feel, even if the language they have is just bad? And that's okay. It doesn't have to be a really big vocabulary, but it's a lot of me talking. How does that sound when I kind of offer this idea of leading with that heart space rather than that mental space of trying to figure it out?
It feels hard when I think about, because then that's me getting into feeling myself, which doesn't come easy for me, which then makes me feel bad. So like, that's a whole different thing. But I do think that when I have in the past, taken that approach to just, and maybe it was me trying to get them to think about the other side of it, like, what do you think that that person was feeling when that happened? And even if it wasn't a situation that they took part in, it may have been, more so them talking about something that was observed, or this happened, today, and da, 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 and um, they, then you can tell that they reflect more. So it's more, they come at it with more reflection than they do defense. um, they're not trying to then explain themselves. They're just trying to think about the situation, which I really do think is beneficial, because then you can work through not just the why and the how and the what, but like the feeling, and you know what happens after that, the thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? um, Not just to you, but to everyone involved. So I would agree that that would be beneficial and helpful for not just them, but me too, you know what I mean, to connect to the feelings and the emotional, like you're saying, the heart side of it, so that they know that that's important, not just to think about, but to also feel and be compassionate in those scenarios.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think as we observe our children doing something that is unhelpful, or they come to us telling on each other or whatever it is, our natural response is just to try to fix it, so to harmonize, to offer whatever, guidance is going to need to be said to get us through this moment. And it's really, if we can observe ourselves, oftentimes we are having feelings alongside of this, of like, we're really frustrated that this is happening again, or we are really disappointed and we want to just get this resolved and parented so we can get through it. And in that, it could also create a lot of anxiety of, I have to resolve this immediately, of like, I need to, they just said this, there has to be an immediate cause and effect. Otherwise they won't know that what they did was mean or hurtful, or, in some way, just not how we operate as a family. But for children, especially as they are having these interactions and these moments, if they're really reactive, if they're still really angry, they're still really frustrated, they're still really, sad, afraid, whatever it is, they first need to be able to get to a place of calm. We say like regulating your nervous system, getting back to this sense of not that we are no longer sad or mad, but we are not buzzing with that sensation. It is not on, we're not flooded with it anymore. And so if we can first connect with our kids and help them get back down to this level of more calm and balance, then it's in that place that they can actually hear our parenting,
Yeah.
hey buddy, like, how do you think our other friend felt? Or, we don't really do that in our family. You're a really kind
Right.
kiddo, but that didn't seem very kind when you did XYZ.
Yeah.
Because when we're flooded, in the same way for us as adults, when we are really anxious, when we're really mad, that's not the moment for someone else to like guide us, right? Like, we need to get to this place of being able to regulate our nervous system back down, to even hear those things, because it's a different part of our brain that's operating, right? We talk about like the reptilian brain when you're really flooded. Logic and reason is not part of that. We have to be able to calm that down before we're even ready. And so even thinking about that, it's actually helpful that you need more time to think about what you want to say, because you can start first with the let's calm, let's bring us down into like, okay, we know that we're sad. What does that feel like for us to be sad? Or know that we're mad. What does that feel like? And help them get moved out of that flooded state. So then you can offer the guidance of like, okay, what might we do next time? Or how do you think Joey felt when this happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you were saying to begin with, that problem solving, that's like kind of an always where, straight where I want to go first, because I feel like that's just the way, that's just, the approach. It's like, there's a problem, so you have to solve it. Like, what are all of the instances? So, um, giving time to almost settle, like you're saying, and then come back to it, because then, everybody has time to reflect, and sit in what it was, so I guess for me being okay to say like, simply what happened was not okay. Like, let's calm down and have time to think about it or feel it, whatever we need. And then coming back to it would not only help me, but then also, like you're saying, would definitely help them.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, there's a whole world around like the neuroscience of how children are developing, but also like how we engage with them to actually have meaningful parenting moments. I don't know if I have it with me, but there's a really good, oh, here it is. This book is called No Drama Discipline. It's by the authors that write The Whole Brain Child. And I'll email it to you so you have it. But that's a really good resource. Even just, I feel like for me, having some context so that all these various facets of things are so different just has really equipped me, because my response is I will get angry and I will get frustrated. I can feel it in my felt sense. In that type 8 structure, it's very obvious. And it's a different way of trying to fix it, but it's still trying to fix it. And so offering yourself the gift of being able to pause and not feel like you have to have the solution right away, that you can just connect with your kiddo first. So I'll offer that as a resource too that I picked up along the way.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 30 minutes is never enough time, but is there any final thoughts or curiosities you want to just throw into the space before we end our time together?
Gosh, I don't know. I would have to think about it.
That's okay. I just always, sometimes people are like, oh, I have like just one more thing I need to say to the space. And so I just always want to offer it, but no pressure to come up with a final thought. So just,
I guess I will say, I took advantage of your instinct quiz. So I did take that the other day, which I was curious about, because I had read about all the different instincts and I tried to like pick mine. But going through the questions in that quiz were very interesting to me. And to see the ones that were, I was like, oh yeah, I totally agree. So I turned out with as a self-preservation instinct as my dominant, and the 1-to-1 as my lowest. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you should have your husband take it too. It's very interesting, especially to like compare your instinctual stacking. And sometimes people have, sometimes you can pick them too, but even just for him to have some language around it too.
Yeah, it sounded very interesting. So
yeah, for sure.
Check it out.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for sharing the coaching space. It was good to get to be with you and see you in an Enneagram space again.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Abby.
Yeah, okay. Till next time. Hey, Enneagram friend. I'm so thankful for your curiosity in listening to this Enneagram coaching session. Although participants can learn a lot in just a brief coaching session like this, the transformational work really comes in a weekly coaching engagement with a certified Enneagram practitioner. If you feel stuck, discouraged, or overwhelmed by an aspect of your type, or maybe just a situation that you're trying to navigate, schedule a free discovery call with me at abbyrodriguez.com/coaching and see how coaching can help support you in your everyday life.